Greetings and welcome to Talk About It Wednesdays, a member driven conversation on topics that matter most to our members. And on our last member survey, you asked for a conversation about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So on this episode, we'll be unpacking what these terms really mean, why they matter in the labor movement, how they affect our day to day experiences as union members, and how DEI makes our movement more powerful, united, and ready to win. Tonight's episode will be moderated by Nikki Smith, an international representative in the UAW International Women's Department. Nikki is a third-generation unionist with deep family roots in organized labor. She has a heart for helps and a spirit of service, having served in our country in the United States Army before beginning her union journey at DESTACO, where she became a member of Local 600 in 1993. Her talents were recognized early on, and within just 4 months of hire, she was promoted to inventory manager before relocating to California for military assignment. Upon returning to Michigan in 2001, she was blessed to be hired into UAW as office support under the representation of OPIU Local 494. Her nature toward leadership and advocacy was evident early on in OPIU, where she served in a multitude of leadership roles, including committee chair for the Community Services and Education Committees, as well as establishing a Health and Wellness Committee. She represented the membership in the positions of steward, convention delegate, collective bargaining committee, recording secretary, vice president, and ultimately local union president before being appointed to international staff in the education department in September of 2021. A lifelong learner and pursuer of knowledge, she utilized the negotiated tuition assistance benefit to pursue education, and she completed her BSW from Wayne State University in 2016 while balancing work and family. She utilized this degree in her leadership roles within her local union, as well as for her position of board president of the New Beginnings Community Development Corporation. Nikki believes in the importance of developing self and others, and as such, she is also a certified health and wellness coach through IIN and a certified holy yoga instructor, leading free community workshops that help people cultivate balance, resilience, and holistic wellness. And we are thrilled to be joined by our special guest, International Representative Larry Robinson from the UAW Civil and Human Rights Department. Larry L. Robinson was born and raised on the west side of Detroit, Michigan, where he currently resides. He is the firstborn child of Larry T. Robinson, UAW Local 600, and Thelma L. Robinson, AFT DFT Local 231. Growing up in a union household, he learned at an early age the value and dignity derived from hard work, along with the relevance and priority of standing together in solidarity. Larry started his journey with the UAW in 2011 as an operator for Automotive Components Holdings in Saline, Michigan. Brother Robinson is still a proud member of UAW Local 892, where he has had the privilege to serve the membership in various capacities. In 2015, Brother Robinson was unanimously elected as president of Local 892, making him directly responsible for the welfare of over 2,000 union members. This was an unprecedented victory as he broke down barriers and became the first African American to ever hold that position at UAW Local 892. In this position, he instituted educational and social programming that empowered the membership and promoted solidarity. He was re-elected as president in 2018 and again winning by acclamation in 2021. In June of 2021, he was appointed as an international representative assigned to the Civil and Human Rights Department. In this position, he continues to fight for the rights of UAW members across the nation. Brother Robinson's desire to continue walking in his passion as a union activist, using his God-given gifts and abilities to educate, inspire, encourage, and empower members to stand in solidarity as we continue to strategize and mobilize to improve our workplaces and our broader community. Good evening. My name is Nikki Smith, and I'm an international representative in the UAW International Women's Department. And I bring you greetings on from our department director, LaShawn English. Welcome to this episode of Talk About It Wednesdays, where this ever important topic that we will be discussing tonight on diversity, equity, and inclusion came directly from our members' suggestions. But before I introduce our special guest, I need to run a few ground rules for tonight's episode by you. First, we need you to know that we will be recording this episode live, and it will be rebroadcasted on the UAW Women's Facebook page. Secondly, we're asking that participants be kind and respectful of this space. And lastly, if you have a question about tonight's topic, we're asking that you drop it into the comment section and we will address it during our Q&A segment. And so now please join me in welcoming our special guest, my brother and fellow union advocate, international representative Larry Robinson from the UAW International Civil and Human Rights Department. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Nikki. It's an honor to be here. Just grateful for this opportunity to come and talk about something that's really important.
Well, you were the man for this mission,
Right.
considering that civil and human rights, that's your wheelhouse, as it relates to dealing with making sure people's issues are addressed so that there is no discrimination, there is no bias, and DEI falls in line
That's right.
with that concept. And so when I think of DEI, I think it goes beyond the policies and the practices, right? I think it's about how we show up for each other, whether it be your workplace, our local union, or in society as a whole. And so to start this discussion off, I want to start off with this question that is actually twofold. First being, how would you define diversity, equity, and inclusion? And then the second part of that question is, why are these concepts so important to our union?
Absolutely. Well, first, let me say I'm bringing greetings on behalf of our international president, Shawn Fain, and the entire executive board. Shout out to the director, LaShawn English. What up, Doe? Super excited for you having me here tonight. And I want to shout out the director of our Civil and Human Rights Department, Sister Helen Walker. She is an awesome director doing some amazing things within the Civil and Human Rights Department. This topic, diversity, equity, and inclusion, the first thing that I want to say, it's important for us to say the words. Society has created this acronym, this amorphous acronym that makes us think negatively about DEI. And so to me, it's very important for us to actually say diversity, equity, and inclusion. And because if you have a problem with diversity, equity, and inclusion, then there's really a problem with you, right? And so let's break that down. Number one, diversity, equity, inclusion is about providing access and opportunities to historically marginalized and disenfranchised groups of people. It's not just about black people. It's about disabled people. It's about our veterans. It's about the LGBTQ community. And it's about women's. And so we have to understand that it's important to provide access and opportunities to these marginalized groups, because for so many years, decades, even centuries, they have been pushed to the side where their voices haven't been heard. So let's start with diversity. Diversity is recognizing that we live in a multicultural world. And so our society for so long has a tendency to be binary. It's just black and white. It's just male and female. But that's not an accurate representation of the world we live in. And so diversity says it's okay if everybody doesn't look the same, it's okay if everybody doesn't think the same, and it's okay if everybody doesn't sound the same. We should embrace our differences and allow those varying perspectives and opinions to be brought to the table so that we can actually look at this from a broader perspective. Equity is something I love. It's different than equality. But equity is about fairness and justice, and recognizing that these differing identities don't all have the same access or opportunities. It's recognizing that we don't all have the same access to resources, whether that be schools or tools that are necessary to be successful, and we don't have the same access to the opportunities as certain demographics in our country has. And so we have to make adjustments for those imbalances and make sure that we're providing that access and those resources and opportunities to all groups of people, not just one group of people. And then inclusion. Inclusion is making sure that we don't exclude or ostracize any of these groups, right? I believe we had a conversation earlier about making sure everyone's voice is heard. You know, this is extremely important, not just in the broader society, but in our unions as well. We want to make sure that we are listening to all the workers. And when we begin to provide that equal access to opportunities and resources, we'll see our organizations become stronger and we'll see our world become a better place.
Absolutely. When I think about the equity part of that, you know, in the past we've always had conversations about we want equality, but I remember seeing a graph where you have people looking over a fence. And so it was the perfect depiction of what equity really means, because the boxes are different heights so that they can all see over the fence. And that is what equity is. Sometimes you may live in a school district where the tax base, they're bringing in more money, which means the kids are going to have great schools. Whereas where I grew up wasn't a great tax base on the east side of Detroit, which means the schools were depleted. And so we didn't have the same opportunities as it related to the type of education that was available to us. I was blessed that, you know, being a third generation unionist, that my mother was able to send me to private school, but that's not everybody's case, right? And so I always keep that visual in my mind when it comes to trying to put a picture to what equity looks like.
Absolutely.
So then the next question is, as union members, right, our values, we talk a lot about fairness and solidarity. Those are our values. How do DEI principles deepen those values?
Well, in my opinion, they go hand in hand. I believe that our union leadership should reflect our union membership, and our union membership should reflect the broader community. And at the end of the day, as an organization, we must embrace the diversity that we have within our organization. Article 2, Section 2 of our Constitution talks about uniting in one organization regardless of the demographic or protected class. And so when I teach our diversity, equity, and inclusion classes across the country, I say it doesn't matter what you look like, it doesn't matter how you spell your name, it doesn't matter who you love. As long as you're a dues-paying member in this organization, you have the same rights, roles, and responsibilities as everybody else. And that's something that once we truly embrace it as an organization, we can extend that to the broader community. And once again, it makes our world a much better place.
Absolutely. But it's about having the conversations, right?
That's what we're doing.
And that's what we're doing. But sometimes I go back to what you said earlier when we started with the initial question, us moving away from the acronym, because there's negative connotations. We recognized at the beginning of this year, everything was about rolling back and stripping away DEI. They never said the 3 words. It was all tied to the acronym, right? And so that automatically gives you a negative connotation. And depending on where you come from, you either think it's a good thing or you recognize that it doesn't benefit any of us as a whole when you think about advancing society. I want to transition though and talk about, like, because this is the women's department, when I looked at some of the data as it relates to DEI, we automatically think that it is women of color or black women that are the most impacted by rolling back of policies, and that's not the case. So this question is, what specific DEI challenges do women in unions face?
Well, the first thing that I think about based on conversations that I've had with women across the great UAW, is getting rid of the good old boy stigma, right? A lot of our facilities, a lot of our local unions, you hear people complain, oh, it's just the good old boys club, right? And, you know, it's somewhat understandable looking at it from a historical standpoint. In the early 30s, 40s, there weren't as many women in the workplace at that time. And so quite naturally, our union was primarily made up of white males. But the demographics have changed through the years, and I don't have the specific statistics. One that I did look up prior to today is that our union is made up of approximately 45 to 47% women. And so that's a huge difference than what it was in the 40s, right? And so the question I began to ask is that same percentage reflected in our local union leadership, right? And we know the answer to that in most cases. And so the union as a whole has a challenge to overcome to make sure that we're embracing women specifically, but also other demographics that have been marginalized and disenfranchised in our own union, right? We've done things to keep people out of leadership roles. We've done things to keep people out of the higher paying skilled trades jobs, right? And as a part of the Civil and Human Rights Department, our goal is to say, okay, these type of practices need to cease. And we need to educate people, and then we need to empower people and equip them with the tools that are necessary for them to go out and run in these elections, to win these elections, and to change the face of what our union is so it reflects the membership.
Absolutely. Part of that is also we need to be aware of making sure that we're able to communicate with people, right? And so this is a very diverse area that we live in, and we have a lot of demographics even within our own union. And so when I think like over on the west side, Dearborn area, even as it relates to how we communicate with our members, the publications we put out, ensuring that things are translated into a language,
That's right.
people's first languages, so that they're able to comprehend it in a way that you're empowered to go forward and do the work,
It's being
right?
inclusive, right?
Absolutely,
Yeah.
that's part of inclusion. And so we do have some challenges. We have advanced, but there's still more work to be done, right?
I heard somebody say that we're doing change work, and change work is challenging. You know, people are resistant to change. And so, but I'm up for the challenge, and we got to go get it.
Change agents,
That's
is
right.
that
That's
what
right.
that's what it means to be in a union. That's what it means to be a leader in the union. You have
Facts.
taken up the charge to go forth and be a change agent, not just for yourselves, but for us collectively, right? What successful DEI strategies have you seen in unions or similar organizations?
Well, we had a success story, and it's still a work in progress, but actually one of Region 1's locals right here, UAW Local 771, I believe it is, and we were able to get contract language in their latest agreement that creates a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. Where the company has to meet with them monthly to discuss diversity in the workplace, any challenges and things that are happening, and also provide yearly training to the members, to management, so that because one of the things we have to understand, our world is ever evolving,
Absolutely.
right? Change is kind of a constant. And so because of that constant, we have to continue to educate ourselves and equip ourselves with the tools so that we can handle this ever-changing workplace. So that's one of the wins that we've had most recently, because when you get that language in an agreement, now you have something in black and white that you can hold the company's feet to the fire on.
And it lays the foundation for you to expand in the future with future contracts, right? You get your foot in the door and you get it in black and white, that's what we need.
Yep.
And so that's a beautiful thing. My hopes is that I'll be able to set my eyes on that language at some point because we're building a whole database
Okay, okay.
of
Absolutely.
shared language when it comes time for people to go and negotiate their contracts. So
Hmm.
thank you for sharing that. And congratulations to 771.
I
That's
know, right? Shout
huge.
out to Kevin Dix, the chairman over there, Menon Gibbs. I think even Dewana King even came in and helped out on that particular assignment. So,
I love it. Kudos. That's a beautiful thing.
mhm.
So I'm going to transition to talk about data culture and resistance because we just talked about how we had looked at statistics. Data informs a lot of the work that we do, whether it be prepping to negotiate a contract or whether it be coming up with an organizing drive and knowing who you have to go and actually knock doors for. Um, so, in that vein, how can data help shine a light on disparities, particularly for women of color or members of intersecting identities?
So, first, let me give you some data that I pulled up, and it's not specific to unions, but it's specific to diversity, equity, and inclusion and the boom that we saw in 2020. For those that don't know, diversity, equity, inclusion has been around since the Civil Rights Act of 1964 when discrimination and harassment was banned or outlawed, prohibited in the workplace. It had different names and it has morphed over the years. But most recently, after the death of George Floyd, we saw a huge increase in diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives in corporate America. And so look at these numbers. Listen to these numbers. CBS aired some statistics that looked at the executives in the S&P 500 companies here in America. In 2020, there were actually only 253 black or African American executives. By 2023, that number increased to 417. And that sounds good, right? And if you look at that alone, you'll say, that's awesome. Diversity, equity, inclusion is working, right? But then you have to look at comparison. In 2020, there were 6,286 white executives. 6,000. And the number didn't go down, being that diversity, equity, inclusion programs were put in place and they were hiring more minorities, and their number actually still increased to 6,469 in 2023. Now, the question I asked, which is a rhetorical question, but are those numbers reflective of our broader society? Absolutely not. You mean to tell me that there are only 417 qualified African Americans to fill these executive spots that we have in corporate America? And so when we begin to see numbers like this, we have to resist. We have to stand up and begin to speak truth to power and say there's something broken in the system. And the issue is everybody doesn't have the same access or opportunities. They don't have the same resources in their communities. And so I think people are afraid to answer the question why. Why are certain communities treated differently than other communities? Why are they policed differently? Why are their schools different, right? Because if we were to provide equal opportunity,
Yeah.
right, then you would see different, statistics and where we go. So ultimately, to kind of bring it back to this idea and this concept of the women's department and intersectionality, we have so many different demographics within our union and within our world. And so we have to start taking steps to make sure that we are allowing a true representation, a true representation of not only our membership, but specifically our membership in the leadership, and then we see it in other places in our world. And so we have to resist, we have to fight, we have to stand up, we have to pay attention. We can't, you know, be an ostrich and stick our head in the sand. We have to open our eyes and pay attention to what is actually happening, first in our workplace, but ultimately in the broader community as well.
And I think because of what's happening in the broader community, all the more important that we be conscious and that we be committed to the efforts of advancing rights and protections for everybody. It's overwhelming.
It can
Everything that's happening
be.
in society right now, everything that's happening with our government right now. And I think it would be easy for people to be swayed and to not necessarily ignore it, but put blinders on as a means of self-protection or self-preservation. But now is not the time.
Absolutely.
For that.
Let me talk about two false narratives that has been put out against this acronym DEI, we know to be called diversity, equity, and inclusion. Number one, they try to create the narrative that diversity, equity, inclusion puts unqualified people into jobs. Number one, diversity, equity, inclusion is not just about hiring. It's about programs, training, leadership development, things that once again provide access and opportunities to marginalized and disenfranchised groups of people. So hiring is just one part of it. But ultimately, if you get hired, you are qualified. There has never been a company that placed a person in a position that they weren't qualified for. You have to meet the qualifications in order to be
Get hired,
eligible,
right.
right? And so this narrative that we're putting unqualified people in these positions is a false narrative. And then one of the reasons why I brought up that statistic that was aired on CBS, it shows that white people are not losing jobs, right? They're growing as well. And so, you know, trying to make it seem like these minorities are taking jobs from deserving non-minorities is a false narrative, and we have to speak truth to power and let them know that that narrative is false. And at the end of the day, if we want our world to be a better place, we need these diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives to keep pushing the growth
Yes.
of all groups of people within our society.
Absolutely. And again, it goes back to the conversation and having those conversations. I think that when we look at the statistics, I had shared with you earlier that I had saw right after they were blowing the dog whistle and, you know, they're taking your jobs and we have to do this for whatever reason, all of the fallacies, right, and the spin that they give us. But they were given the statistics that show that it's not even African American women that benefit the most from these programs or policies. It's actually white women.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And so when we have these conversations, it's about recognizing that if you're not rich in this country, you are in trouble. Do you hear me? If you are
Facts.
not rich in this country, you are in trouble, which means we all need to be on the same page and coming up with a strategy on how we're going to fight this, because it's very real and it's getting worse by the day, which is why it starts with tonight's discussion.
That's right.
And
That's right.
understanding what it's really about and coming up with strategies so we can combat it. Have you seen resistance to DEI in labor spaces? And if so, what is the best way to navigate skepticism and pushback?
So, the way that our department presents diversity, equity, and inclusion, it's hard for people in good faith to push back against it, right? Because we help them to understand what it is. And so if you stand against that, you're standing against being a good human being. So let's start there. But let me tell you what we do see. We do see, unfortunately, discrimination and harassment in some of our work sites. And so we receive complaints, whether they are from the leadership that have members that are experiencing discrimination and harassment, or it's the member themselves that have reached out to our department or to the region for assistance. And number one, this is the importance of collective bargaining agreements. And so one of the things that I'm going to be redundant in saying tonight is you need to have some type of language in your agreements that speak to diversity, equity, and inclusion, that speak to a zero tolerance policy, or just the fact that we will not tolerate discrimination and harassment in the workplace based on your protected class, whatever that protected class may be. And when we have that language in our collective bargaining agreements, we are now able to first start off fighting in the grievance procedure, right? That's our first line of defense as union members. We look at what the contract actually says, and if the company is either violating that agreement or allowing it to be violated by someone, we got a problem. Houston, we got a problem. We start with the grievance procedure. But then we also instruct our members and teach them about other tools and resources that they have. You have the EEOC, which stands for the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, right? This is a federal agency, so it doesn't matter if you're a union in California, a union in Texas, or a union in Michigan. You can file an EEOC charge if you believe that you are being discriminated against based on your protected class, right? And I always keep it real with folks. It's not always easy to prove discrimination and harassment complaints, but don't let that deter you or stop you from filing the charges, because statistics have shown that 60% of the EEOC charges that actually are found to have merit are not the original charge, but it's the retaliation charge. And so if you never put in the original charge, it's going to be much more difficult to get the retaliation charge. So I encourage people, even if when you first do it, it doesn't go anywhere, you're establishing a baseline to say, hey, something is happening, and you need to document everything. But it doesn't stop. That's just one tool. I've been also encouraging our members to use what we call FEPAs. FEPA stands for Fair Employment Practice Agency, and it's the state level. So each state has its own Fair Employment Practice Agency. Here, it's the MDCR, the Michigan Department of Civil and Human Rights in Michigan. But each state, you can Google it and you can find out. Because it's a smaller entity, they usually respond a little bit quicker and actually with a little bit more intensity. And so it's a great tool for our members to fight the discrimination and harassment that they might see. And so we're trying to eradicate all discrimination and harassment. It's a work in progress, but they call me rainbows and sunshine. I believe we can get there. I believe we can get there.
Hope is a very real thing,
That's
and
right.
you got to have it in order to survive. At least that's my motto.
And let me tell you one more thing. We try to encourage all of our locals to provide training to our members, because the more training that we have, the more powerful we become. Knowledge is powerful, but you have to put it into use or action for it to show how powerful it really is. And so we provide training. It doesn't matter, where you're located. You put those requests in through your local union leadership in your region, and they reach out to our department, and we will come and train people on diversity, equity, inclusion, on discrimination and harassment, on ending sexual harassment in the workplace. We actually even tailor trainings for our locals and our regions to make sure that we're addressing the needs of the membership. And so between those those things, the grievance procedure, your federal agency, which is the EEOC, your state agency, which we call FEPAs, and providing training to membership, this is how we resist and we stand up against workplaces that are filled with discrimination and harassment.
Thank you for sharing that. That's a new one on me, FEPA.
Yep.
So, of course, I'm going to have to go do a deep dive after this discussion to get
Okay.
all up into that. But that's good to know. And those are very valuable resources and organizations to assist in addressing the issue.
Absolutely.
When it comes to building DEI, though, into our union structures, what role, because you spoke on it a little bit as it relates to Local 771, getting a diversity, equity, inclusion in, what role can, let's talk about what additional roles collective bargaining can play in advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion policies.
So, bargaining is incremental, right? You don't get everything in one agreement. I used to, when I was president of 892 and we would have our new hire orientations, I would take a sheet of paper. The very first Ford agreement was approximately this size, and it was 4 pages long, right? 4 pages.
Yeah.
If you were to see to the national agreement now, right, you're talking thousands of pages, right? And so that gives you a visual of what incremental bargaining means. It means that over the years, you see what needs to be changed and you bargain for those things. And so the very first step is, like 771, get something. Get some language, get something into your agreement, right? And then as you begin to participate in these joint meetings with management and you see the positives and you see the challenges, create more language to make it even better for our membership. And before you know it, a couple of contracts, we got some serious language that we can hold management accountable within our facilities about promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion. And so that's the major part. And our organization is membership driven. And so if you don't know, you have the ability to write resolutions anytime it's contract season for your facility. And so I would get a group of people. One of the things that I like to share, I say, one voice whispering in the dark only makes so much noise. But if I got 1,000 people all standing, shouting the same thing, you best believe they're going to get heard, right?
Yes.
And so you have to create the momentum and the movement within your union. Get people together. If it's a legitimate problem, they will stand with you. They will write the resolutions too. You can give them the language to write.
Yes.
And number one, let me take it a step further. We're going to provide language to our local unions. We provide boilerplate language so that they can go in, and of course you have to negotiate it, right? And you have to win it. But we help you with that as well. And so you're not on the island alone. You just have to take the steps to foster the change that you
Yes.
want to see in your organization.
Yes, yes, and I love the fact that that we're moving in the direction of providing boilerplate language, right? But under the premise that you do have to do the work in order to tweak it and tailor it as it relates to the conditions within your work site,
That's
and to get it the way. And that's, again, about having the conversations and coming together and taking everybody's issues into consideration and listening, not just for the purpose of letting people air it, but we have to listen with the intention of understanding.
Absolutely.
And so I want to get, like I said, a copy of that language and probably some of the boilerplate language that you already have as we go through expanding and building out our
got it.
database,
Yep,
you know,
you
because
got
it's important. There's no reason to have to reinvent the wheel, right? This is what we do.
Yeah.
And when it comes to negotiating our contracts, it's I call it bricklaying.
Absolutely.
right? And so
Absolutely.
each time you go in, you're going to lay a few
Layer.
more bricks until you build that house and it gets to where everybody needs it to be for every member,
Hmm.
which is hard sometimes, especially when you're in environments where we had to deal with the tier situation, and
Hmm.
things of that nature. But when everybody has the same ultimate goal,
Hmm.
towards the end, it's easier to row in the same direction.
Absolutely.
Um, so let's talk a little bit about the intersectionality as far as why it matters
Hmm.
and how unions can better support women across race, gender identity, ability, and class.
As I mentioned before, we are not in a binary society. It's not just black and white. It's not just male and female. One of the things that I was actually just at Black Lake doing a class, and we talked about understanding the LGBTQ, movement, and understanding that um, their varying gender identities, which is what a person believes they are, which can be different than uh, their sex assigned at birth. There's gender expression that has to do with how they express themselves outwardly, right? You have varying ethnicities, right? Races and different religions, right? There's so many different demographics that we have just within our own UAW, right? And if we're going to be an inclusive union, if we're going to stand on the UAW Constitution, Article 2, Section 2, that states uniting in one organization, regardless of your race, regardless of your color, regardless of your creed or religion, your marital status, your gender identity, your gender expression. If we are going to really stand on that Constitution, then we have to understand that we have to include everybody. If they're paying dues, they're one of us, right? Now, once again, you embrace the diversity. They may not look like you. They may not sound like you. You know what I'm saying? They may not even completely think exactly like you. But that's okay,
Right.
right? Because those different perspectives bring strength to our organization. Let me talk about it from a woman's standpoint and me personally. Any organization that I'm a part of, any team that I'm helping to develop or create, I made a declaration that I will always have a woman be a part of the team. And it's because as women, y'all bring something different and special to the table. Things that as
Yes.
a man, we don't always think about, right?
Right,
And
right.
so I recognized that very early in my leadership career. I was like, we need a woman on the squad. And once I started recognizing the usefulness of
Yes.
varying and differing perspectives, we became stronger and stronger. And so ultimately, as an organization, we have to embrace that diversity. We have to understand that it's not binary, that there is a diverse amount of demographics and groups of people within our union. But at the end of the day, we're all union siblings. We are all part of this union family. And so we embrace and include them.
Yes.
Listen to their voice, listen to their concerns, help them to understand that they are just as part of this union as we are, right? Like it's not no big I's and little U's. And so I ultimately don't think we as a union are going to achieve what we can achieve until we actually fully embrace diversity, equity, and inclusion completely.
I agree with you wholeheartedly on that. And one of the things I appreciated the most about when I first got assigned, I got my appointment to staff, I was in the education department, and the director was intentional about diversity and inclusion. She was intentional in ensuring that uh, male, female, black, white, Latino, that team looked and was more representative of what our whole membership looks like. And the experiences we got out of that and the work that we were able to do because of that, because everybody got to lend their perspective based on their experience and their upbringing, right?
Absolutely.
And culture plays a very huge process in that, and it did help shape the way we did some things for the better.
Absolutely.
Because at the end of the day, it's about servicing this membership in a way that they get all that they need. And the only way we can ensure that they're getting all that they need is to have all of the voices of the membership included in the process
Say
of
that.
determining what happens with
That's
us,
right.
right?
Because without inclusion, what we're ultimately doing is saying that this group doesn't matter, right? And you know, yeah, you can quote unquote be a part, but we don't care about your opinion. We don't care about your voice. Sit over there, let us do the work, right? And that's not going to take us where we need to be. Everybody's voice should be heard. You know, one of the things, I was talking to a good friend of mine, and she was sharing how she had an idea for their local, right? And for whatever reason, she wasn't heard. But then just a few, maybe months later, a male introduced that same idea, and
Greatest
everybody
thing
was
since
like,
apple pie,
"You're
right?
and so, you know, that of course made her feel a certain type of
Absolutely.
way, right? Because why isn't her voice being heard, right? And you know, that's a area where that individual could even step up and say, hey, this was such and such's idea,
Right.
right? Because that is that inclusive part of saying, come on, you had a great idea. I know, you know, it was brought from, you know, I presented it
Yeah.
and they ran with it, but I want people to know that this was your idea.
Yes.
That's a way that we can show or be more inclusive to make that would make her feel, you know what I'm saying, incredible. Like, okay, here I am a
Right.
part of the team, right? And
Right.
so I believe that we have to take those proactive steps to be more inclusive within our local unions and in the union as a whole.
And that boils down to allyship, right?
Mm.
And so it takes absolutely nothing, or it costs you absolutely nothing to give somebody the credit that they deserve for the work or the idea that they're putting forth. Because we are all in this together, you know. And if it's truly not your idea, I have an issue when people try to take your intellectual property, right? Or they try to take credit for your ideas. You throw it out there in order to help all of us collectively. People just want to be recognized when all is said
That's
and done.
right,
So
yeah.
give them credit for what they're presenting. Good, bad, or indifferent, you need to acknowledge what somebody is saying.
Facts.
Yeah.
Facts.
So thank you for that. I think we're at the time now where we're actually going to transition to viewer questions. And so I'm going to reference our chat, and we'll take some questions from the chat. First, based on, this is on us talking about intersectionality. It says, how do we ensure that DEI includes not only race and gender, but also age, ability, LGBTQ plus identity, and other intersecting identities?
So we have to be intentional, right? And part of being in the diversity, equity, and inclusion space is saying, hey, I understand that it's more than just race and gender, right? And so we have to invite people from these historically marginalized and disenfranchised demographics of people. Invite them into the planning sessions, right? Invite them into the opportunities where they can raise their voice and talk about what they would like to see in their local union. I was having a conversation in one of our trainings, I think this was last week, and, you know, I shared with the class, you know, you can't be afraid to do new things. Right.
Right,
And
right.
so, you know, one of the things that the great Walter Reuther incorporated was the bowling leagues that we have in the
Yes.
UAW, and that was one of the first steps toward integration
Yes.
within our organization, right? And that was something that was somewhat of a novel idea at the time, right? And now it's a national thing, and we got bowling teams from locals all across the country, and it's a beautiful thing. Well, it started somewhere. And so one thing that I encourage all of our local unions to do is think outside the box.
Yes.
Like, it's okay to create new programs. It's okay to do some new things. As long as you don't violate your bylaws and you don't violate the UAW Constitution,
Yes.
let's get it, let's go, right? And so we did all types of things at Local 892 where I was from. One of the first things that I did, I was a chairperson of the Veterans Committee, and
Thank
I
you.
wasn't. And here's the thing: I'm not a veteran, but I'm an ally. I'm a supporter,
Yes.
right? I have my grandfather was a Korean War vet. My uncle is a Navy vet, and I have another uncle, Air Force, and cousins in the Air Force and Navy as well. And so I ran with the committee, and one of the first things I did is I created something called Party with a Purpose,
Hey.
right? And you know, I was young and full of energy, and so I knew how to throw a party.
Yes.
Right? And so we threw a party, but we took the money that was raised at that party and we donated it to the Veterans Affairs Hospital.
Yes.
And we actually took our committee and spent some time with the veterans there, right? Had never been done at our local, to our knowledge, the way that we did it. And it was something new and fresh and an idea, but it involved a different generation of people.
Yes.
It was for a good cause. And so at the end of the day, if you're not violating those bylaws, if you're not violating the Constitution, you know, create these innovative spaces for your members to feel like, you know what, this union thing ain't so bad,
Right.
And we can do some pretty awesome things. And so to me, that's the big part. You want to try to create ways to be more inclusive, to give people something different than just the good old boy thing that we've seen for the last 20, 30, or even more years.
I love that you just shared that, because we have so much creativity in this membership.
Facts.
When I look at some of the stuff that our members are doing, it is just mind blowing to me. I'm like, what?
Absolutely.
When talent
Yeah.
upon talent upon talent, very creative. And so it's important to think outside of the box. And I used to hate for people to always tell me, well, this is how we've always done it, which is why we still stuck.
Absolutely.
We're still stuck
Absolutely.
because this is the way we've always done it. If you aren't willing to evolve, if you aren't willing to try to freshen up the way you've been doing it, you're going to continue to get the same results. So don't be afraid to think outside the box, y'all.
That's right.
Don't be
That's
afraid
right.
to lean into your creativity and create something new, because that's what we need. We have to start creating spaces that people actually want to show up to and participate in, right? So
Absolutely.
I love that. I love that. Let me see if we have another one.
Okay.
Someone says that they attended a great civil and human rights training at the region
Okay.
at Region 1, and they
Awesome.
learned a lot. So the other question is, what role can allies play in supporting members who are most impacted by inequities in the workplace?
So a couple things. I had a old wily vet say to me one time when I first started off in the plant. They said if they come for you on the afternoon, they're gonna end up coming for me in the morning, right? And it helped me to understand that an injury to one of us is an injury to all of us, and so we can't just sit idly by and say, oh, that's not affecting me right now, right? Because ultimately it will affect you. And so a true ally, when they notice injustices within the workplace, even though that injustice may not be affecting them directly, they need to speak up, to stand up, to make sure that they are not allowing that to go unnoticed, unchecked, and try to be the change that we need to have within our facility. And so that's number one. The first thing is that we can't walk around with blinders on and say if it's not affecting me, I'm just here to get my check and blah blah blah. Nah. If it's affecting one of your UAW siblings, chances are it's going to affect you at some point, right? In some way, shape, or form. And so we got to take the blinders off and make sure that we are protecting one another, standing up for one another, and speaking out for one another. But even beyond that, I want us to make sure that we are doing what we can to provide education and training.
Yes.
Right? Because once again, the more knowledgeable we are, the more powerful we become. And so when you equip people with the tools and the things that are necessary, it kind of gives them that oomph that they need to even stand up for themselves maybe, or to stand up for someone who may not have the tools or the ability quite yet. And then last but not least, the AFL-CIO has constituency groups.
Yes.
And these constituency groups are usually specific to a marginalized and disenfranchised group of people, right? We should join these constituency groups and support them because, once again, the things that affect one demographic, if they aren't affecting the other demographics, they will.
Yes.
Right? And so we have to stand up for each other, come together, unite. That's what a union is all about. And stand together in this thing called solidarity. It shouldn't just be a buzzword. It shouldn't just be something that we throw out. It's something that we have to live. And the way we live that is that even though that person may not look like me, even though they may not talk like me or even think like me in some regards, right? They're still my UAW sibling, and I'm standing up for their rights just like I'm standing up for my own rights. And so,
absolutely, solidarity is a whole verb.
Yes, it is. It's an action word.
You have to put action to it. It
Yes.
requires action. And when it comes to allyship, I tell people that you cannot profess yourself to be a union advocate and silently observe injustice. Like, they don't exist in the same space. And so if you see that something is wrong, to reiterate on what you just said, if you see that it's not right, it may not be impacting you in the moment, but trust and believe at some point it will, which is why we speak up when we recognize that this isn't right, so it doesn't snowball and become a bigger problem down the road. Address it. That's the whole purpose of having a grievance procedure, right? So you can address those type of issues right in the moment when they happen.
Absolutely.
And I think that's it for the questions. We're actually coming to the end of our time together. It went way too fast.
Right, this was pretty awesome.
I enjoyed this discussion with you, and I thank
Absolutely.
you for taking the time to come and educate us.
Hey, kicking it with my sis.
Oh, I love you, bro.
Anytime.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.
I really,
appreciate
really
you.
do. Like, this is my brother from another mother. And I claim him
That's
as my fellow union advocate. We appreciate your knowledge. We appreciate your way, and that you came to have this most important discussion with us, because we have a lot of work to do, and this is where it starts.
That's right. Let's talk about it.
Let's talk about it. I'm sure we'll have you back. We'll probably end up expanding on some collabs, maybe doing some joint trainings with civil and human rights, as we really try to get all of our members on the same
Absolutely.
page with moving our union
And
forward.
that's what I'll kind of close out with. Like, if I can make a plea, a challenge to all of those that are out there on the various platforms, request that training. Request that our department comes out and speaks to your members. We even speak to management. We've done full facility trainings on more than one occasion where we train not only our members, but we train management as well. And we want people to be equipped and empowered to defend themselves and to fight for justice in the workplace.
Absolutely. So take it from our brother, Larry. Make sure you request the training. We want to take the time to thank you again.
Anytime.
Appreciate you greatly. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening. You should be seeing a link in the chat that goes directly to our survey. Please take time to complete the survey because that is how we bring discussions like this live to you. These are all from your suggestions, and we bring it to fruition, and we invite guests so we can have these discussions for you. So thank you for your time. I hope that you enjoyed this episode. Thank you for tuning in. We'll see you next time.